Star blessings. I just want to say a few words on the solstice because I've been thinking about it today. I saw some pictures of the what's called the Schumann resonance. Some of you may be aware of that. And the pictures, let me just share my screen so I can show you. So this is the first one. This is what the energies normally look like. These sorts of shades, shapes, lines, colors, etc. And the way they are at present is like this. So that just got me thinking, because I remember saying, during my New Moon in Gemini video, I said something to the effect of, because this new moon is occurring a couple of days before the solstice, it's a very powerful new moon. And I mentioned things about the, just the different cataclysmic events, actually, and nature of reality, everything that's occurring on Earth. I mentioned that during the solstice, I thought that a lot of those matters would be expanded, let's say, or, feeling more powerful, more expanded, and so on and so forth. And I was just saying that from the point of view of, because the solstice is such an important time spiritually, especially, but it also has an impact on the earth, right? Because everything is one, everything is connected, nothing is separate. So whatever's going on with the stars, or the movements of the planets, the movement of the earth, the seasons, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about the solstices. We're talking about the seasons, right? And the sun reaching a particular point in its journey throughout the zodiac, right? And in Australia, it's the shortest and coldest day of the year for us because it's winter. And in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the opposite to that, right? So we have short day here, and you guys have a really long day there, as it were. And the solstice is always also a time where it is said that the veils are very, very thin, right? Relative to this dense physical reality and spirit, or the spirit world. And I know we sort of, and I do this as well, I'm pointing to out there, or we point up there to the sky when we make reference to heaven, or God, or goddess, or the stars, or whatever it is. And well, there is, a sky with stars and planets that are beyond our physical reach, as it were. So they do exist in a different time space, as it were. And we are having an experience of those energies relative to our position on Earth. And that is why there is a thing called, sidereal zodiac, which is, I think it's identical to the Babylonian zodiac. Then we have like esoteric astrology, which is another level behind that. So you have the constellations, right, which we know them as the zodiac signs. And in our tropical zodiac, they are neatly divided into 12 sets of 30 degrees, which is the 360-degree zodiac that we work with, right, in the tropical system. But each constellation is not 30 degrees. Some of them are really large, some of them are smaller, and so forth. And within every constellation, there are numerous stars. Some stars have got a real royal signature about them. Some have a real dark signature about them, so on and so forth. So we have the constellations, we have the zodiac, the sidereal zodiac, which lines up with the constellations. That's why, if you looked at, if you went to, let's say, an astrologer in India, they would end up, depending on exactly when you're born, but typically your sun sign, moon sign, everything moves back virtually one sign, right? Just to keep it simple for this explanation. But when we work with the tropical zodiac, we're working with a different system, because we are working with these solstices, with the equinox, with these seasons that define the tropical zodiac, because the tropical zodiac is based on the zodiac beginning at 0 degrees Aries, right? Which is 21st of March, which is the beginning of the new astrological new year, and so forth. So the solstice period, which is 0 Cancer, which is a cardinal sign, which is the Mother Earth, you could say, that particular degree corresponds to, very spectacular stars in the constellations as well. It has been spoken about, mythologically and historically for eons, relative to its significance from the point of view of the stars that it connects with, and so forth. And, in various traditions, the solstice is a big deal, right? It's celebrated in a very, very specific way, depending in which culture you look at, for instance, right? But overall, we can probably all come to one sense of it, and that is that it's a very, very powerful time of a shift occurring, most certainly. And also, just it's even showing us, that the shift is occurring. It's different in the northern hemisphere, and it's different in the southern hemisphere as well. Those nuances can play out in very specific ways depending on where you live. So where you live and when the solstice occurs, that's going to draw up a different chart as well, right? And today I'm going to have a quick look at the chart for the solstice in Australia, because that's where I live, and I just tend to by default go to Melbourne charts when I'm looking at the movements of the planets, or ingressions of planets in new signs, and so on and so forth. But I just wanted to show you these pictures. So that's the energies at the moment, and I've seen a lot of people post these pictures yesterday and today. And some of these people claim that, they've been following this Schumann resonance charts for years and years, some of them for decades. And there were about 3 people that said that they've never seen this particular graph before. So it's very, very unique, very new. Now, what does it mean? Who the hell knows? But is it an indication that there's something really, it's hard to articulate, right? Because we don't know exactly what it is, but there is clearly something very different to what has been occurring previously when you look at this chart or graph relative to this one. And this is all happening, obviously, just before the solstice, right? So that's not a coincidence. So here's the chart for, no, that's not it. No, that is it. 22nd of June, correct. So 22nd of June, Melbourne, Australia, at about 12:58 a.m. So there's the sun at 0 degrees of Cancer, 0 degrees, 0 minutes. That's the solstice, basically. This is the ingress chart of the solstice for the Southern Hemisphere, or for Melbourne specifically. And quite apart from this being, such an important time spiritually for ourselves and as a collective family and unit as well, because the veils are so thin, there are always opportunities, you could say, or potential to penetrate, beyond the density of what appears, because the density of what appears, which is the 3D reality, which is predominantly Saturn at that everyday level, is very limiting. And what does Saturn rule? It rules limits. Now, once again, Saturn is healthy as well. We need boundaries. Saturn creates those boundaries. But just in understanding this from just one particular perspective, which is that this 3D dense reality does limit us quite a lot in so many different ways. and especially from being able to penetrate beyond and through what is appearing in the physical. And from a psychological perspective, that translates into feeling like, well, this is it, you know, this is as far as it goes, or this is as good as it gets, and so on and so forth, right? Because we are just simply defining and identifying what we are seeing in the 3D realm. But our spirit, our soul, sees everything. It sees all the dimensions. It sees all the energy. And, you know, very basic, simple example of that is, and some people are just, you know, a lot more intuitive and have, you know, stronger instincts or a stronger sixth sense, which is your instincts, or who are empaths, you know, people call themselves empaths, whatever terminology you want to use. Some people are just more sensitive to energy, right? So you walk into a room, if you're one of those people, and immediately, before you figure out what's going on from a mental level, energetically, you've already figured it out. And I'm certainly one of those people, always have been. I saw a great line the other day. It said, I came, I saw, I felt the energy, and I left. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of like my natural, you know, mode of operation on a daily basis, really. So anyway, with the solstice, that's what we're sort of talking about. We're talking about being our senses being more sharp, if you like, or more intuitive, or just simply that because the veils are so thin, we are not so limited or blocked, right, by the density of the physical reality. So that's one of the great things about solstice time, quite apart from all the rituals and celebrations and traditions that go along with it, and that have been going on for thousands of years, really. So it is a very special time. And, you know, looking at those Schumann resonance charts, you know, it's kind of mind-boggling in one way, because we're left in a position thinking, okay, well, what's going to happen here? And my sense is that things are going to ramp up quite a lot, you know. But we always have a choice as to what we participate in and what we choose to invest our energy in and what we choose to focus on as well, because we are living through the most cataclysmic times of our life, as we are all aware. And so the drama and the chaos and the cataclysmic nature of this reality is far from over at the moment. There are energies that are picking up a different momentum, but the resolution is going to take some time, specifically because Pluto's gone back into Capricorn. That's a window. It's going to go, I think, as far as 27 or 28 Capricorn. And it's not going to get back into Aquarius till next year. So, you know, for the rest of this year, we are still dealing with the closure of Pluto in Capricorn. And when you have a planet like this that hasn't been in this sign for 248 years, which speaks to the collective soul of the planet and the significance of the evolution and transformation, well, then when the planet goes back to complete its entire journey, right, in this sign, which is what it's doing right now, you can imagine the volume of intensity of just that portal and that energy, because it's got to finish everything. It's got to close it and finish it. So there's an escalation of energy of whatever Pluto in Capricorn has meant. It's going to be very, very intense for the next 6 months. I'd bet money on that if I was a gambler. I'm not, but hey, I do like the roulette sometimes, if I do get to a casino, which is hardly ever, but occasionally. The other thing is transiting Jupiter, and this is all, you know, as part of the ingression of the sun in Cancer, which is the solstice, right? Transiting Jupiter is sextile Saturn. that's very important. And that gives us a bit more hope and a bit more encouragement. Because what we need to recognize here is that that conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, because that cycle began somewhere, right? Now, these two planets have a 20-year cycle, right? Coming back together every 20 years. So the conjunction started in 2020, right? When the world went to shit in a way that we have never witnessed in our lifetime anyway. I think we can all agree to that. Whatever we believe about it and however we have dealt with it and the choices we have made, that's another story. But did the 3D reality go to shit? Did the biggest shitstorm explode? Hell yeah. I don't think anybody would be able to say no to that. So that was born not only from, but very much born out of the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. And see, that's the that's the mystery of a conjunction aspect, which I've mentioned a few times. A conjunction aspect, first of all, it's the most powerful aspect. Out of all the aspects, it's the most powerful. And one of the reasons it's the most powerful is because it contains every aspect within it. It contains the 360-degree circle, which is where aspects come from the division of that 360-degree circle. So a conjunction, in other words, has numerous possibilities of what it's going to give birth to and how and what that's going to look like and so on and so forth. So we know what was born out of that conjunction, a shitstorm of chaos on the third dimension reality, bringing about some necessary changes in certain ways. I would say more spiritually and more from our own being tested on a spiritual and soul level, right? With our level of actual true faith within ourselves and life, right? Because when everything is sweet, right, you know, we're just rolling along, right? And the minute we are threatened by something externally, well, that's when our faith is actually really tested. And I'm not talking about faith in religion necessarily, although it could be that, and there's nothing wrong with that if it is. But I'm talking about true, deep, authentic faith and connection to soul and spirit that no matter what occurs is unshakable. And I'm pretty sure that the majority of people, their faith was shocked to the core in the last 3 years for various reasons. So it's been a huge spiritual initiation and test for all of us the last 3 years relative to our response to it. And the Jupiter sextile Saturn at the moment, this is like the first window, right, of this 20-year cycle between these two planets that has reached a point which is defined by the sextile aspect. So it doesn't have, well, it's not a square, it's not an opposition, it's not a conjunction, it's a sextile. So it has a softer tone, and it also speaks to however we restructured our life from 3 years ago, the things that we needed to change, forget about altogether, adjust, because all of us had to do that in various ways, in one way or another. We all had to do that, right? So however we have done that and whatever we have created subsequently, well, this Jupiter sextile, the Saturn, is really going to help us actually start to maybe move forward with what we have set in motion. And there's help, because a sextile is opportunity, it's support, it's harmonious, it's two energies harmoniously flowing together, supporting each other. Now, we want Jupiter and Saturn to be in support of each other, because they are two energies that really represent the complete antithesis to one another. One is control, restriction, suffocation, limitation, oppression, depression, suppression. I know I'm bringing up all the shitty stuff about Saturn. There's magical stuff about Saturn too, and I do bring that up through various videos as well. So just please be aware that I'm not bashing Saturn, but I'm just trying to draw an obvious distinction here between these two frequencies. So Saturn has all those layers to it, has a lot of positive layers, healthy boundaries, knowing your limits, building your life, having the discipline, having the ability to commit, and so on and so forth. So it has many great things about it as well. But when it's coming sort of at us, as it were, in that collective picture that we've been seeing the last 3 years, it's the worst side of Saturn. That's why so many people have suffered. And Jupiter is, he's the he's the king of the gods, right? Lapping it up with all the different relationships and all the different enjoyments and blah, blah, blah. So it's a very different energy, right? And Jupiter, of course, on a more serious note, is our ability to trust and to have faith in the divine plan, in spirit, in source, in soul, and in yourself. When you've got a strong Jupiter in your chart, and I do have that, and so I'm speaking from personal experience, I've got Jupiter in Sagittarius, no matter what has gone on, and I've been through some pretty hairy situations in my life in so many different ways. But I've always had this inner knowing, doesn't matter what happens, I'm still okay. And that's not a mental decision, that's actually an inner sense and knowing. That's Jupiter. So here we have them sextile each other, and we're talking, Taurus to Pisces, two very different signs, but those signs are sextile each other, so they are compatible, they are actually feeding into each other. And of course, Saturn is in Jupiter's sign, so there's a reception, one-way reception here, so that adds to the strength of this sextile aspect. So you've got a sextile aspect which brings some type of opportunity or opportunities. You've got a reception between the two planets which actually amplifies the strength of that sextile as well. And Jupiter is in Taurus, so it is about our resources and sustaining our resources and building our resources and working on that, right? And I would say, not just externally, but internally as well, because if we focus on building only external resources, what can happen at some point through tragedy, through misfortune, whatever you want to call it, something might happen and those external resources that you've created and built are just taken away for whatever reason. There's millions of reasons as to why that could happen. And then suddenly you're standing there with nothing, as it were, in the material world, and you've done no work on your internal resources. So imagine how excruciating and how painful that journey would be. Now, I'm not saying if you've built internal resources that journey wouldn't be difficult. Of course it would. But you would have been building on something so deep inside you, your internal resources, that when it comes to a situation like that, if that does arise, you will handle it in a much more graceful manner, and possibly not suffer as much as well. It comes down to over-identification with, right? And, you know, sometimes taking it for granted that, you know, I'm always going to have this, I'm always going to have that. Well, you don't know. None of us know. Anyway, this is a very fortunate energy, right? That is pretty much bang on 7 degrees, happening at the solstice, which is good. Then we have this little trio combination over here. Moon, Venus, Mars. Now, I've spoken about Venus retrograde in Leo, and I'm going to come back and talk about it with Ariel Gutman as well. And I just want to leave you guys with one final thought, and that is that you can see here that Venus and Mars are very close, right? And yesterday, well, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I spoke about the ingression of the nodes moving into Aries Libra, which begins in July. So watch that video if you haven't watched it. It's a really great overview of the transition of the nodes in Aries Libra and what that could potentially speak to for us individually, collectively as well. The point that I'm trying to get to is that Mars and Venus are the rulers of that Aries Libra ingression of the nodes, and here they are conjunct each other during the solstice. There's the solstice, the sun at 0 Cancer. So this energy is very important with the overall essence of this ingress, because this ingress, this solstice, really speaks to, you know, the next few months, let's say, right? And what's going to unfold collectively, as it were, and or individually as well, based on this chart alone, right? It's not the only thing that's going to describe what's happening in our lives, but this is like a general kind of collective energy, because the solstice is it's a universal thing, right? And a spiritual thing, alignment. So the Venus Mars is together, so, and they're in, you know, the hot, fiery, passionate Leo sign, and speaking to, if we speak to romance and passion and love and creativity, there's a lot of juice there. But one thing that, and I think I did mention this a couple of videos ago, I don't remember where, but I was just reminded of it today. Mars and Venus don't actually get to form an exact conjunction. Why is that important? Well, it's important because she's trying to catch up to him and she's not going to get to him. So she's going to go retrograde, and then he's going to, and sorry that I'm using the female male genders towards the planets. It's a habit, and I do feel that Venus is predominantly feminine, although she was masculine in the myth, in the Mayan myths at some point through her journey in the underworld, but that's another story. I'll perhaps come and talk about that another time. She is predominantly the archetypal feminine goddess, whether you're a man or a woman, etc. And likewise, Mars is a yang masculine energy. So she's trying to catch up to him. He ends up going into Virgo, ingressing into Virgo. So he moves away from her. So that little hot passion, love affair thing that's kind of building and building and building and building, it won't get there. Not this year anyway. So that can be translated in a lot of different ways, depending on who you are, what's going on in your life, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're chasing somebody or somebody's chasing you, or, you know, whatever it is. Or it could just be, you know, lots of your creative pursuits and passions and desires at this time, and the will and desire to really execute those creative projects and so forth. So it might mean that some of those things won't come to the point that you are maybe anticipating or hoping or wanting this year. But let me show you this. This is just, and I did speak about this, not on a video, but I just made a quick post about it a few months ago, I think at the beginning of this year, actually, because I was looking ahead. Because I can't wait for this ingression to happen, and I'm just, it's phenomenal. Anyway, I'll just show you. Here it is here. So check this out. This is where Mars and Venus do catch up and form a conjunction, and look who's there with them. Pluto. And think about it, right? We've never had this triple conjunction in our lifetime, ever. Because Pluto's only just recently gone into Aquarius. So this is powerful shit. Really powerful for our soul, for our relationships, for the whole gender ideology stuff. There's going to be massive stuff that come through this, stuff that's going to be so far-fetched, actually, on, you know, those levels with those matters that are going on. But just from our own personal perspective, this is the ultimate soul union, passionate love, transformative relationship life path moving forward. And for all of us, because that's a universal ingression there, right? It's just going to be somewhere in everybody's chart. It's going to be in a different location. I will come back and speak to that really in depth and in detail, but I just wanted to highlight it today because when we're looking at the solstice, we see beautiful Venus and Mars over here, and yes, they're conjunct each other, but they don't get to form their exact conjunction. So she's kind of chasing him and he's speeding off. But as I just showed you, they meet up in Aquarius with Pluto next year. That is going to be absolutely one of the most intense, one of the most freaking intense energies, you know. And also, actually, let me just say something, sorry. Yeah. So there they form their conjunction, right, with Pluto. This is the ultimate signature for, it could be re-meeting a person from the past that you've had a lifetime with before. Whether it is that or whether it isn't, it's going to be the most transformative relationship, total soul union. And Mars and Venus are the rulers of the nodes, right? Remember, the nodes transitioned into Aries, Libra. It'll be July this year, right? So it'll be, 8 months before this. And you know, Mars and Venus rule North Node and South Node. So, yeah, this is huge. This is huge fated shifts, relationship growth, soul transformation. It's huge. I'll come back and speak to that triple conjunction, though, in due time. Lighting in here does my head in. I loved my previous place so much more. I miss it. And I'm really sad about it. I've been here for a year now, and I'm going to move again, actually. I was meant to come here, though. I still haven't figured out why, to be honest with you. For instance, the name of this suburb is conjunct my North Node. So I was meant to be here. Still haven't figured out why yet. But I'm just trying to embrace it as much as I can. But it's not where I want to be really long term. So, well, I guess I'm feeling that a lot now with, you know, the sun's going to go into Cancer, solstice, and, you know, quite apart from all the things that I referenced in the last 40 minutes or whatever it's been, Cancer is about your home, right? Your roots. It's feeling like you belong where you are, wherever that is. And I don't feel like I belong here. And I've got sun in the 4th house in my birth chart. So home to me is so, it's like my sacred haven. I'm a real homebody. If I'm out socializing and, you know, whatever, I can completely go into that zone, and I'm just like a complete social butterfly. You know, I can do that whole social thing with complete grace, with so much fun, with so much energy, yada, yada. But when I'm at home, I become this little Cancerian hermit in my sacred little haven, sun in the fourth house. And so if I don't feel at home, it really it bothers my soul, because the fourth house connects to soul as well. All the water houses do, the water trinity. So I guess I'm feeling that a lot at the moment, with energies leading into Cancer and so forth. But anyway, I'll see you guys very, very soon. Hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for listening. Bye for now.